They're gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
Welcome back to Never Fade, the NFT podcast. Thanks for joining us. Absolutely appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate the feedback. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us at Never Fade NFT. I'm your host, FaXx, as always, with the one, the only Trippy Ape, Hoodie Punk, Pink Check Bandit. What's good?
What's good, dude? I did realize for the first time that I think Trippy Ape might stand for triple bogey. Had a pretty rough go on the course the other day. First time I've thought about the Trippy Ape in a negative context, you know.
Well, it feels like you switching your PFP from a Trippy Ape to the Hoodie Punk. It kind of like marked like a little bit of shift in sentiment with what's going on with Bored Ape Yacht Club. What's your experience been since you've switched to PFP? You've got the Hoodie Punk with the single visualized value, Pink Check. Have you had any kind of like different feedback or different experience since switching up your PFP? I know people generally are like kind of like scared to do that. Like, oh, this is my brand. And you were like, who is a proponent of rebranding, kind of like rebranded your account. What's the experience been so far?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, no one's really commented on it. If anything, I feel like people just forget that I hold the best ape in the collection. No, but I think people. One day we should do a show on that, and people we actually come up and try to go toe to toe with apes. It's gonna be. They'll lose every time. Just there's nothing you can do about it. It's programmed. Yeah, it's been good though. I don't know if a lot of people understand my PFP now. Like, I don't know if they know that like the pink check's a single check or there's a hood behind it, which I don't really care what they think or what they know. It's cool. I like it. My check hoodie is me. There's nothing you could do about it. Feels freeing to not be tied to a collection. Like, you know, this is someone who supports Ethereum and likes Jack Butcher, and that's kind of all you need to know, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I guess I will say from like the trade value, you know, I know you traded it for a pudgy rod, but ultimately like the timing of getting into a Hoodie Punk and letting go of some apes was seems like it was pretty good timing at the moment. We'll see. Look, bottom line is like there's a lot of NFT collections that are like quote PFP, profile picture collections, which is kind of like a weird concept when you zoom out. Like, this is hyper niche stuff that we're doing, but we've heard, you know, Jack Butcher say that the PFP is like the beachfront real estate of digital property, and how powerful it is to like put your brand or your collection kind of like at the forefront of somebody's digital identity. And we've seen so many different variations of this, and mostly we've seen PFP projects fail just because there's been so many, you know, that were put out like on the back of Bored Ape Yacht Club. It was just like people were just printing them. But we've seen some really stick, and we've seen these communities gather around the ones that do, and it adds to like the sustainability and longevity of the PFP. One that I've noticed and I've been kind of curious about and I wanted to learn more about is Kanpai Pandas. Kanpai Pandas is one that I think was released at in the bear market, but they've sustained, and I think that they've sustained kind of on the back of their founder IceBagz. He really seems to like just be driving forward, you know, regardless of market conditions. Like, he's just seems like hyper focused and just like, you know, not stopping to wallow in the down bad takes of the bear market. He seems like very bullish. And so that's who we're going to be speaking to today. And I'm looking forward to it. Like, what are you hoping to glean from this conversation with IceBagz?
Yeah, I mean, I know nothing about Kanpai Pandas, know nothing about him. But just in reviewing, you know, his Twitter and stuff, it sounds like the dude's a mover and shaker in business, and he's conflating, the business world with the NFT world. I think that's always interesting. I think this really does mark our first podcast in going deep into business narratives and business stories as IceBagz background, as I'm sure, he has some good stories there. So for people who are tuning in here, if you're not in the NFT space and you kind of want to hear business narratives and how someone came to be, this is a good episode for that, I'd assume.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to understanding more about the path that led him to this point and trying to get some Web3 builder alpha. We got Bagz in the studio. Thanks for joining us, Bagz. How you doing?
Doing great, man. You guys?
We're doing good, man. I mean, at the time of recording, looks like we're rebounding a bit in crypto land, and it's amazing to see how quickly those vibes flip. You were just saying how your phone was blowing up because people were all hyped up, man. What are you hearing on your end of things?
I mean, it's euphoria right now. I mean, we were at 24 something a couple of days ago. It was like crypto's dead, and then all of a sudden, BlackRock wants in, and we got fucking 9 ETF filings, group chats going, wild right now. So we'll see. I think probably 32 is kind of what everybody's looking at right now. But I expect a pullback. We're not, we just ripped like $4,500 in a couple days.
Yeah, the timing of these events is super interesting. SEC lawsuits cracking down on 2 of the biggest exchanges, FUD everywhere, the regulatory pressure, and then suddenly, bam, Citadel, BlackRock, Fidelity popping into the game. You can't make this up, It's like American financial gangster behavior,
100%. Yeah, when the big boys want in, man, they're going to find their way in, right? They're going to shove their way in. I mean, that's the way it works. FTX goes down. They're going after fucking Coinbase of all people, which is the one person you probably shouldn't go after. Maybe them and Gemini, right? Then it's CZ's on deck, and then it's another one. Then all of a sudden everybody starts filing, and it's all right, this shit's all planned.
Yeah, it's a lot like the gold ETF filing. We all know what happened after those things opened up. So it's pretty interesting. I think that the trigger test has happened a couple times now, and I don't think the people have been shaken out like they had hoped. So it's time for ultrasound money to go next wave.
Yeah. And alts are going to get left behind. So boys, just be prepared if you're in alts.
Yeah. So that's your call, huh? You're anti-alts. I myself am.
No. I love alts. I fucking love alts. I mean, that's the way that people get filthy fucking rich with no money, right? But when BTC starts roaring, alts just get left in the dust, man.
Yeah. Definition of alts for you. Walk us through your definition of alts. Everyone's got a different one.
I consider anything outside of BTC an alt.
Okay.
I consider ETH, maybe some of the major L1s, alts, and the rest of them are just shit coins.
Yeah. I'm kind of bullish on the idea that I think that we're going to have some categorical mistakes on the alt definition. I think there's going to be some things caught on the line. I'm of the mindset you got Bitcoin and you have Ethereum. I don't consider Ethereum an alt. I consider everything else outside of Ethereum and Bitcoin an alt. But I also think there's risk there to not call Solana, to include Solana not in that category, which I think it could have some upside for Solana maxis who guarantee that Solana is not a max. They could see some upside here. Not going to count that out.
I think everybody can. I think you look at Solana, you look at ETH, you look at maybe Polygon, a handful of others. That's going to be your next wave, right? I think BCH just popped off 20%, which tends to say okay, some other shit's going to start following here after Bitcoin. But it's usually Bitcoin ramps up really hard, and then it consolidates. And if alts aren't following at that point, BTC could easily take another leg up and leave everything in the dust again.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about your group chats. I'm in a a co-working space out here. It's a pretty new co-working space, and it's been pretty quiet the last couple months. And today there's a lot of chirpers. There's a lot of people coming out the office talking a little louder than normal. So first early localized signs of the little pump, which is interesting.
Well, thank God everybody on CT is the best trader, because apparently everybody on CT is long the lows. So it's amazing, but it looked like it happened again.
Yeah.
CT is like, it's like leveraged groupthink, like it's like everybody takes this like position all together and goes in one direction, and then suddenly everybody goes the other way on some leverage short and everything. It's like out of control. But
Look, man, 90% of it's fucking LARPing anyway. They're not even in a position, or they got shook out or whatever, and then they're just cheering with everybody else for fucking groupthink.
well, look, that being said, that's how I met you, is on the timeline. And what I like to do is get a little bit of history on how did you get into Web3 and into blockchain in the first place, Bags?
For sure. So I come from traditional business background, real estate, property management, restaurants, that type of stuff. So I've been building businesses for like, I don't know, probably 16, 17 years. In 18, I got in pretty heavy. It was my brother. Shit, my brother was telling me, I got the same story as everybody, right? Like, brother told me about it at $500. I didn't touch it, told him he was a moron. Got in 18 after the market crash in 17. It went from like 20 to, 6, back to 10. I'm like, oh, here we go again. I'm finally going to shove. So I shoved pretty hard. It went immediately to 3, like in a few months. So I got my teeth kicked in that 18-19 bear market, and then obviously stuck around and went full time like in 18. So I've been here for 5 solid years. Started I was doing seed rounds and advising and doing that kind of stuff for a couple of years, and then got into this project in April of 22, May of 22, something like that.
Wow, so you've been full time in crypto for 5 years.
Yeah, so I came more from the crypto side, obviously, than prior to NFTs.
So prior to NFTs, were you mainly like trading? Were you, you said you were somehow involved in raising capital, or?
Yeah, I mean, raise capital. I'm not a lev trader. Never have been. I advocate against it pretty consistently. I'd buy big spot positions and play long swing spots for 3 months, 6 months.
That's fascinating. And so when you saw, like, in 2021, when NFTs started really popping off, like, what were you doing during that time?
So, I was late to the game on NFTs when it came to, the trading side, for sure. I think my first like big one was I was actually had Deez and Sobe in town, and they were, we were just kind of talking about what was going on, and I dove in head first. I bought like 20 punks around 30 ETH before they all ran up to like a 200 floor or whatever. I bought a bunch of Fidenzas and that kind of stuff. That was kind of like my introduction into it. I made pretty decent money on that run. I never really got into, all the minting and things like that. It was just so degenerate. And I didn't have the time to sit around and like chase mints, right? So I never got to, and I'm sure it was fucking fun and fascinating for everybody. And a lot of people got, hilariously rich off of it. So I wish I would have, but I don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. It's like not at the top of my mind when I got 100 things going on.
Yeah, hence the name Bags. You just came in and swinging with some bags and just sweat punks. Like, a lot of people who are trying to mint and print certainly are not in a position to do that. And that's really like pretty interesting. You're like in crypto for a while, and you see what's going on, and you just come in and straight go in for the top tier. So are you still holding any of these crypto punks, Bags?
Nope. Sold them all off. I mean, I think anywhere from like 200 to like 70, I think was probably my range. But yeah, so I sold them all off. I mean, believe me, I'm holding tons of dog shit. Like when Azuki and Capsule House were launching, I think I was like, oh, Capsule House is such a better project. Like, look at this sear light, look at the artwork, yada yada. And I think I spent like $150,000 at like 0.2 or some shit. I mean, I'd be like one of the biggest Azuki holders right now. Instead, I've got a wallet full of Capsule Houses.
Everybody's got these like heartbreaking stories, but it sounds like you're one of the few Chads that like did sell punks at the top and some other stuff probably at the top. So, that's your kind of swing trading background and so forth. So, at what point did you decide to found your own NFT project, and why?
Yeah, so my story is quite different. Like, I was helping a project. So the meta back then was always the honoraries, right? It was like you had to have honoraries, and that was the only way you were going to get visibility. So these guys came to him. They're like, hey, can you help us with this? I'm like, yeah, I know everybody on CT. So we got like 40 of the biggest names, got honoraries in their hand. They had a huge white list of like 20,000 people on deck. And this was in the bear market. You know what I mean? This was April of 22. Like things weren't going great for NFTs. So it was pretty hyped up. And I remember I was supposed to be going to the Masters on Sunday, and I think Tiger was in the final round. And so me and my boy, Casino, called me the night before, and he's like, hey, we're going to fly over a group of people to walk the Masters, behind the ropes, do this. And so I'm like, me and my boy just drove over to the casino. We're like, we're going to do this. So we're having drinks in the fucking high limit room. We got our laptops out. We're like minting this, this drop. And all of a sudden the contract breaks. And so the contract breaks. Shit goes ape shit. This was my first experience in Discord. I go into the Discord. It's like, rug, they're fucking taking the money, yada, yada. I'm like, holy shit, what is going on in here, right? And as you guys know, you've been in Discord before, and I'm sure you guys were probably in like the mania phase as well of the minting and seeing all this stuff. That was my first experience. And I'm like, what a fucking shit show, right? And so I'm sitting there, and they're like, we need help. We need to do something. I was like, you got a few options. You can refund the money. You can, pause it, try to redo it, and, try to rebuild from there. And I was like, or fuck it, I'll just take it over. I've been wanting to do an NFT project on my own for a while, and, give you some of the funds back. They're like, let's do it. So I literally left the casino at like 1:00 in the morning. I get back to my house. I hop on Twitter, and I'm like, hey, I'm taking over this fucking project. Like a complete fucking moron. I'm like, I'm taking over this project. I'm going to do this. Who wants to help? And so Primo from Layer Zero hit me like literally 10 minutes later. He's like, let's do this. Ghostly Ghost had just launched as like the first Layer Zero Omnichain project. And he was like, let's do it Omnichain. So we did. So we spent the next, couple, weeks, month, working on that kind of stuff. I put a team in place, and that's kind of how it started.
Wow, that's wild. That's a wild story. I didn't know that, man. So basically, Kanpai Pandas.
Yeah, it used to be Yakuza Pandas.
Okay, so
the only reason that changed is because when I went to we have a suite at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas for the Raiders. And so when I bought this suite for fucking 15 years, I'm literally on the phone with a guy, and they're extremely hard to get a hold of, right? Because it's the most expensive ticket in the NFL. It's where everybody wants to go to. All the suites are owned by like either casino operations or, huge conglomerates. And one company had just gone under, and the guy calls me. He's like, I got this suite. You have like 15 minutes to take it. And so I'm like, I'm done. I'm in. Like, tell me where to send the money. And he's like, what's the name to put on the suite? And I'm like, Yakuza Pandas. And then I'm like, hold up. I can't fucking put Yakuza Pandas on a fucking NFL suite. Like, it's a Japanese gang, right? Like, you can't do that. So I'm like, I want it, but I'll call you back. And I'm like, guys, we got to do something here. Like, this is not going to fly, right? So Kanpai means cheers. And our whole kind of thing in the beginning was all about, in real life entertainment, suites and parties and that kind of stuff. So it made a lot of sense.
So the first order of business was some rebranding.
Yeah, get away from the gang.
That's funny. So that hit you real time. So you were like, the name was operating. It was good and great. And then you were like, you know what? I'm finally on this above board call where I have to interface with real humans. And I gotta pull the name.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't even think about it, right? Like, I've got 100 things on my mind. I'm like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're gonna do here, and I'm putting a team in place. Didn't even think about the name until it was like, hey, we're gonna put this on the placard of the suite at an NFL stadium. And I'm like, hold up, that ain't gonna fly. Like, they're probably just gonna tell me like I can't even buy the suite,
They're gonna think you were gonna roll up with a bunch of Japanese gangsters, dude.
Yeah, like the fucking Crips Pandas, right?
Yeah, you'd probably get a call from you'd probably get a direct line call from one of the casino operators that's like, hey boss, like, we should talk, but on a different line,
Or the Yakuzas roll up on me.
Right. So that's pretty crazy. So you were literally like at the casino, and you're seeing the Discord actually just go bananas because they think this project is running, and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to swoop in here, probably like the way that you may have swooped in on distressed properties in your real estate, past, right? It's like, it's those deep discount opportunities. So like, why try to acquire a project like that instead of starting one from scratch?
I mean, I think, look, a lot of work goes into them up front, right? So if a lot of the work's been done, that's an advantage, especially if it hasn't like launched fully and then failed. Because I looked at like potentially taking over Capsule House. I actually talked to them. And as I was getting into it, I was like, this doesn't make any sense because the community's dead. The project really isn't doing anything. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. I didn't really have that with this because it was just kind of getting off the ground. So there weren't those kind of negative connotations or drawbacks to it. But in the grand scheme of things, look, I just got really drunk and made a fucking decision. Like, there's not a whole lot to it, boys. Let's not overcomplicate things. I'm very, very calculated in my business and the way I run things. But believe me, there's some times where I just make snap decisions. That's the way it is.
Yeah, would you say that those snap decisions, because I wouldn't fade snap decisions from someone who has seen a lot of outcome, and I pretty much come from a high-end outcome. I kind of come from this mentality that, like, if you want to see outsized outcomes, you have to have outsized risk, and a lot of people just don't have the gut for it. So would you say that those snap decisions are, like, heavily influenced by your intuition that you've kind of built over time?
100%. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've been, believe me, I built a lot of successful businesses. I've launched businesses that have failed for a myriad of reasons, right? Like maybe I didn't pay enough attention to them. Maybe I let things go that I shouldn't have. Maybe it was just a bad fucking decision and an idea that really nobody wanted to do, right? I've been there, done that across the board. I've had so many successes, so many failures. Like I listen to my intuition at all times because it's led me to the point where I am today, where I can afford to make those kind of decisions, right? Like I've done a few things right that I can afford to make those decisions, and it's not going to hinder my life or whether I win or lose. So yeah, 100%. I always trust.
Yeah, and what's your kind of like worst case scenario / risk model that you run through in a quick snap decision? And I guess to frame that context a little bit more, when I make snap decisions, I kind of put myself in this state. It's almost like a Zen state for me, where it's like, what's the worst that can happen? And I'm like, within an instant, I can be happy with it. It's like, that's the worst that could happen. Roll the dice. Like I'm already banking in the worst that can happen. Anything else is upside. Do you have kind of a similar mental model on snap judgments?
Of course, you've got to look at that. And one of the biggest things I think for me is like when I tie my name to something, it almost forces me to do that, right? Like if I would have taken over this project, it would have just been like I probably would have let go of it. We took 7 fucking months to mint out. Like name another projects that took anywhere near that time and is still around today. There's not one, right? So if I wouldn't have tied my name to it, I don't know how far I would have gone with it, to be honest. But since I did, I'm like, I'm putting myself out here and I'm going to say I'm doing it. And I've got a decent reputation. I've been around for a while. That's kind of what my driving force probably was like, hey, I'm going to take this over and I'm going to grind through it. And we did. We ground the fuck through it. You're talking about a 7-month mint. I pulled out like $600K out of my own pocket because we didn't even have mint funds, right? So I spent like $600K out of my own pocket just to get the thing off the ground. So I put my money where my mouth is. I put my name behind it. Like that says a lot.
Yeah, totally. So that's like that's the skin in the game for you. You put your name behind it and it's like, you feel good with the decision. It's a snap decision. Your intuition is like data backed because of your experience and all the things that like the model that you've been curating with your life experience. Then you put your name on it, skin in the game. That's gas on the fire for you. And that's when you're locked in.
Yeah. My thing is, I know if I'm going to make it my mission to do something, I can drive success out of it. Like I know that. Now it may not be instant. And a lot of times it's not, but outside of Web3, when you're building a regular business, A, it takes upfront capital. B, it takes a lot of time, right? Like when I was building my first business, I was probably 26, 27 years old. We didn't have a pot to piss in. My wife was pregnant at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave my sales job that I make pretty good money at, and it's very comfortable, and I'm going to start my own business. And we sat there at the kitchen table and we drew up the fucking logo and we came up with a business plan. And I just started knocking on doors the next day. I think the first year I made like $30,000 and I was working 60, 70 hours a week on it. Right. Second year I made like $52,000. And I just kept grinding because I knew I had something here, and I was like, all right, 30 to 50 may not be that big of a deal, but it is to me. Right. And so I can see where like that growth and that potential is going. And it's the same thing with this. Like I know, and eventually that business became very successful. I still own it today. We've got, 100 employees there. It's a great business. But that was, 16, 17 years ago. But it took me 3 years to get there. Web3 provides this different opportunity. It's like some things are just instant successes, But in my mind, It doesn't, just because you aren't doesn't mean that you're not going to be a huge success down the road. To me, the projects that are really going to be successful a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now are the ones that come up with revenue sources, that have real business models in place, that have leaders that have been through the trials and tribulations. That's what's going to lead to success in these projects, especially with royalties being out of the market. Like, that's a difficult fucking thing to do, right? Because you can't just continue to mint and mint and mint and mint, because people, that meta's gone, right? So you've got to find ways to last and sustain with real fucking business.
Dude, I love to hear this kind of like story of sitting at the kitchen table, taking a chance with the pressure on, building it from the ground up, and then just like running, dude, just hitting, never turning back. So interestingly,
you have to have that mentality, though, man. You have to. Like, I say this to everybody. If you're gonna be a successful entrepreneur, you're gonna be a leader. Like, you've got to have that attitude of if I'm involved, I can't lose, and I will grind on it and keep pushing until I break through.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about the Web3 space is, like, I know CryptoPunks is like one of the most collections with the most notoriety, and it's the most well known with provenance. I know there are things that came before it, but I think the ironic part is, like, CryptoPunks had this like punk type of persona, and really everybody in Web3, whether they identify with themselves as a punk or not, they are a punk. And you realize that when you run a community, you realize how many punks you have in a community, and you realize how many people just will fucking poke the bear, right, of the founder. And if you don't have these like real life experiences and you're built for it, you're going to find out real quick what it's like to like show up every day in the doldrums, in the highs, in the lows, and put your name on it. So I think, like, your experience coming into this space, it's like you have this huge step up because you're already built for it and you can handle those things. But that's, said differently for people who are becoming founders for the first time. You look at, like, I don't know if you follow DGods, or you look at like what Frank's doing from the DGod side. That guy is a perfect example of someone who came in with massive potential, really unproven potential, and has had, a hammer taken to him, and he's growing up in the public space. And I can't think of another space in business where you get to watch their growth in 4K streaming through the TL. You got any takes on that? I didn't even realize FaXx is repping the DGods hoodie. We kind of went full circle there.
Yeah, so I do. I mean, I don't admire being in that position at all. Yeah. I don't know how I would have handled it. How old is he? 22, 23? Something like that? 24?
I think he's 21 or something.
He's got to be.
I don't know.
Yeah,
he's 23.
Something like that, I think, yeah.
I don't know how I would have handled that at 21. Like, that's tough, right? Like, there's days where I'm like, I'm fucking 41 and don't need to be doing this, and I'm getting yelled at by a bunch of 20-year-old kids that have never run a business, right? And it's like, I go, what the fuck am I doing here, right? Yeah. So I can't even imagine being 21, and not having the experience and not having been through that and had the successes and failures. Like, it's a tough spot to be in, man. It is not an easy space to win in at all, because there's so many projects out there. There's so much noise. There's so much clutter. It's like, people come to me all the time, and I've had some like pretty impressive businesses come to me, and they're like, hey, we're going to launch an NFT project. Like, what do you think? And I'm like, I think you're a fucking moron.
Yeah. And look, the truth is that 99.9% of NFT projects objectively have failed. But Kanpai Pandas, at the moment, if you go to blur.io, their homepage is a big advertisement for Kanpai Pandas. Like, how did that come about?
So Blur actually hit me, and we were talking back and forth a little bit, and they were just like, hey guys, like, we're big fans of Kanpai. Like, you guys are one of the few people that are actually like delivering in the space and bringing utility and actually like doing what you say, right? And so we want to, reward you guys for that. And of course I was all in on that. I mean, that's great exposure, and it's tough, right? Like, especially from a holder's perspective. I mean, we skyrocketed like to 2.6, like when everybody else was stagnant. Like we were at like 2.6, and now we're back at like 0.8 or some shit. Like it's tough, and we haven't stopped delivering, right? It's like we're still hitting all the goals that we lay out. It's just a tough market to build in, man. Like if you don't have kind of I hate to say attention economy because it's kind of goofy, but it is a bit of an attention economy, right? So it's like if you're not in right now, you're not in, right? And then nobody pays attention to you. And then it's like all of a sudden, people start paying attention again, you get hot again, but there's definitely ups and downs, and it's hard to build in that scenario, right? Like it's difficult as a founder, as a team. Like I have to tell my team, like, hey guys, like, cause I've got younger guys on my team too, right? And I'm like, look, I've been here before. Like this is what happens in business. You get ups and downs. You can't let it get emotional, right? We just have to look at it and say, okay, what can we do? What can we do to change things and improve things for our community, so that we get that attention again?
Well, look, man, you survived the gauntlet. Basically, you survived. Your project survived this ridiculous bear market, and it kind of creates a moat, right? Like, do you feel like right now, having survived that, being on the front page of Blur, having a floor price that I think is very respectable at this juncture, like, how are you feeling about that situation?
Look, I'm excited about it. I think probably the biggest thing for us as a 7-month mint out, it as tough as that was, like I never thought it was going to mint out. There was times there where I'm like, fuck, it's just not going to mint out. Like nobody wants it, et cetera, et cetera. But it helped us build this great community around us that those guys are never leaving. You know what I mean? Because they love the project. They sat there for 7 months and at a $400 mint, and it ran all the way up to like $5,000 or something. They didn't sell then. Like those guys are here to stay. They like what we're building. And now it's on us to expand that out to more people. So yeah, I think, excuse me, the 7-month mint, surviving, a bear market, who knows how much longer this thing's going to last. But my thing is like, I'm not a short-term thinker, right? As you can tell from my past businesses, like it's not going to stop me from building. The floor price isn't going to stop me from building. I'm going to continue to push forward and get our name out there and build the project that we were set out to build.
Yeah, I think one of the big metas that the macro meta that shook out from 21 to now is that, what NFTs really did is it built communities. What NFTs really did is it made connections. And I think, I don't think we're ever going to get away from the term NFT, but it just is so loaded, right? It has so many different interpretations through it. But I think there's one thing that you just can't fade, and it's the fact that it creates these hyper connections. And like never in the world of business have we ever been able to go into a chaotic server and make connections that could actually last. Like in what world can you go in through a server that's streaming like at an immense amount of speed, carry on a conversation like in a DM or through Twitter, pop on a flight, go see this person, and have like actual like layout business lines on the table and find connections. So there's something to that, like that time warp of connections, that when this thing, does turn back on, I do almost feel that like every community is going to be bound by an NFT of some sort. Do you have any thoughts on like how NFTs will be used in, let's say, like 5 years from now, from a community engagement fandom experience?
Yeah, I think that's the coolest thing about Web3 in general, right? Is the fact that like in the regular business world, I service a customer and I don't get feedback until afterwards, right? And most of the time that's negative, because most people would rather leave a negative comment than even if they had a good one. It's like they just don't want to take the time to leave that, right? So all you get mostly is negative feedback, but it's after the fact. So you really can't change that. The great thing about Web3 when you're building in Web3 is you get real-time feedback all the time from a huge community that cares about you, that cares about the project, that cares about what you're building, right? So that helps you to formulate what you're going to be doing next, because it's what the community wants and it's their voice, right? So that's such an interesting part of Web3 to me, is like you're building in real time versus building on past data. And there's a major advantage to that, right? Now, you do have to mark out a lot of the noise, right? Because the crowd tends to turn quickly, you know, based on a floor price, for example, right? So you have to be able to kind of like say, okay, this is based on their interpretation of a floor price versus this is a valid concern or comment, right? So it does become a little tricky to navigate that. Again, experience helps doing that. But as far as like NFTs going forward, I think most membership based stuff is going to be NFT, right? Like it's going to be NFT bound. Like I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. And I think you're going to see a lot of large corporations moving in, a lot of the large, you know, clubs moving in. I look at it like this, like as an older guy, I've been a member of like 20 different golf courses. Okay. And the golf course model is, you know, you go and you pay an initiation fee, you pay a monthly fee, you pay dues every time you play, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you leave, you get no value back. Right? You can't sell your membership. The club just takes it back. And so what NFTs offers is like, okay, now you get to do all this shit, but now you have something of some value that you can give back and sell to the next person, right? So instead of the club making all the money, for example, now it puts the power back in the user's hands, which is a complete dynamic shift to old business models, but will become much more prevalent as we move forward.
Yeah, and even to those models, right, with the golf club, like they can put 100-year leases on these NFTs as well, right? So like you can inherit it as you can you know, give it away as inheritance, and then there could be a re-up scenario as well. So I think it's having. And I think one of the things about having a secondary market, it doesn't have to be more valuable than what you paid list for, right? Like just having it depreciate and being able to, you know, recover 50% of your original costs, it is a value add.
I think one of the interesting things we're really going to see going forward is more like soul-bound NFTs, to where you can actually like own equity in a company, right? But it's soul bound so that you're not creating a secondary market, hence security. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's going to be something there where people start, you know, crowd raising and funding on like soul bound NFTs, because you're going to get a part of the equity. You're going to get a revenue share if there's a profit there. There's some interesting plays that are going to be coming down the road over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And that are already in the works.
Yeah. And soulbound makes a lot of sense from the gaming side of things. Like people who spend a lot of time in the gaming world on digital platforms that exist out there. You know, I heard a story from someone in my DMs kind of walking me through a conversation they had with someone who's been a lifetime gamer. Right. And they're kind of going through this existential crisis. You know, they're not nearing the end of their time on Earth, but they're kind of asking questions like, I've sunk so much time into this game. The only way I can really like excrete value is be a YouTube streamer or go play esports, because I don't have anything in my wallet to give to my children. I don't have anything to show for my hours spent gaming. You know, and that's why a lot of these gamers kind of rally around the idea of enjoyment, right? It's almost like a rationalization of them saying like, hey, well, I just enjoyed my time. And you hear that all the time from gamers. And it's like, well, because that's literally all you can get out of gaming is enjoying your time. So you're narrowing in on that.
But it's really cope, right? I mean, it's cope. If you look, if we want to be real, like if every time you bought a skin or a gun or something in Call of Duty and it was a limited run NFT and you could fucking sell that thing back, they'd be all about it. If they would have, if it would have been 5 years ago and they didn't waste hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of dollars buying that shit that had no value, right? If it would have been an NFT from the beginning, they'd be all about fucking NFT.
Yeah, I do agree. I think there is a bit of cope there, and I think the other deal is like if somebody were in the NFT space and they jumped from collection to collection, you know, bought list on secondary, took 50% losses, but made 6 connections every single community they went into, I would be like, yeah, that's a brilliant business strategy. With gaming, right, you have to like, you get in, you're talking with people, you're chatting Call of Duty, you're buying things you can't sell, and you're making these friendships maybe, right, but it's pretty much all on-game content, and then you got the cope line of, I enjoyed myself. That's it.
And look, enjoyment's great, right? And enjoyment's great. Like everything you do should have some level of enjoyment. If not, just don't fucking do it. Like we're here for a very short period of time. Enjoy yourself, whether it be gaming or going to a football game or going to a concert or spending time with your family or your girl or whatever. Like enjoy that. But at the same time, like if there's a way that you can make money and enjoy it, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Like enjoyment should be base level. It shouldn't be a value prop.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of caught my eye about Kanpai Pandas is that the branding was on some like UFC fighters apparel. I have a friend that owns some car dealerships out here in Southern California, and earlier on in his career, like he's made a relationship with Manny Pacquiao, putting some logos on his fight trunks, and like that continued on for years, and they ended up becoming like really close friends. And he tells me all these crazy stories about Manny and all this stuff that he went through. And it kind of started with him putting his logos on his shorts, you know, on his fight trunks. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about how mixed martial arts or like entertainment in general is kind of like intersecting with what you're doing.
For sure. You've got to look at advertising, right? I mean, every company on earth advertises. If you don't, you're going to struggle. So whether you're advertising inside the Web3 space or outside the Web3 space, you've got to advertise in some fashion, right? And so we chose combat sports, which is essentially the fastest growing, sport on the planet. Maybe outside of, soccer, like it's probably the biggest global sport, whether it's Muay Thai or boxing or whatever it may be. So you're looking at one of the fastest growing sports. There's a huge crossover there. You got the same demographic. You're looking at, 20 to 50-year-old male, as the viewer. And a lot of, sports and crypto is crossover too, right? You got sports betting and crypto is a huge crossover. So there's just a massive, target audience there to advertise to. And if we can advertise through apparel and say, okay, this is who we are, and then use that apparel to then link people back to the project, and bring more eyes onto the project, it's a net positive for everybody involved.
So, so far with that experience, like of advertising in combat sports, like, do you feel like you're getting the kind of feedback that makes you want to continue to invest in that direction? If so, like, what does that look like or feel like, and kind of where are you at with it?
I do, because it also opens up different avenues, right? Because when you start getting into that world of kind of high profile, athletes and all the stuff that comes along with it, like it opens other doors, right? So like one of the things that we're working on right now is actually starting our own fight league. And I've got some very heavy hitters involved, some good fighters involved. I've got, the right team in place to do this stuff. So we're about a month and a half into like diving down this rabbit hole, but we're getting very close to making a move.
Did you have like a special interest in this type of sport, like, for leading up to this?
Yeah, for sure. Like my favorite thing to do is go to all the big fights. I've been to a lot of the huge boxing matches that are out in Vegas and the biggest UFC fights. So yeah, I've been doing it for years. I mean, to me, it's one of the most exciting sports to watch live. And it's just exploding right now between, if you look at like bare knuckle boxing, I mean, if you look at like Perry and Rockhold, I mean, that shit wouldn't even be on TV 5 years ago, right? Because it would have been like too brutal. But the same thing was said about UFC, 15, 20 years ago, right? Like they couldn't get a contract to get on air. And now you've got all this other stuff coming up. But like the Perry and Rockhold fight did like 350,000 pay-per-views, I think Jake Paul and Tommy Fury did like 700. So if you look at it on that scale, it's like, holy shit, okay. That's an up and coming sport right there that's getting some huge viewership and with some big names that are coming out of the the UFC and other arenas.
Yeah, we seem to be in a little bit of a meta right now in the IRL world of starting leagues, right? Like currently, XFL and USFL on the backs of the NFL, like two going on concurrently is wild when you look at like XFL when it first tried. I think it was about a decade ago, right? And you're seeing the same thing with basketball with these like big three leagues, fighting leagues. I'm sure are blowing up too. Can we kind of go in that down that vein a little bit of this like these sport leagues meta, and from a business perspective, what's kind of the end goal? Because I assume it comes down to like usership, viewership, and almost a network type deal, right?
Absolutely. So, you've got to get some kind of distribution, right? And so we've already got that essentially with what we're doing, just because the management team that we've got involved, that's kind of the bigger thing that they look at, even more so than like your idea, right? Because it's such a crowded space right now. There's so much shit popping off globally. So distribution is by far and away the biggest thing that you need to get off the ground. But yeah, as far as like, sports are such a huge fucking thing. And if you look at like the timeline of like when you went from like, you introduced like fantasy sports, and then you introduced, legalized gambling, across the US for the most part. Like that's when things really started to explode. And when you're looking at the growth of like the gambling sector and the sports sector, it's just, we're at this like area where it's just about to skyrocket. It already is. And I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. As long as you've got a bunch of degenerate guys, across the globe that want to gamble, you need something to gamble on.
Yeah, and like that's kind of been the case with NFTs, right? I think there was like a big overlap between daily fantasy sports, poker players, and then like the early days of NFTs with Top Shot and like Zed Run Racing, and the kind of like it all came from there. So there's this like demographic, and then we're seeing this intersect with social media like Barstool Sports, like Full Send Podcast, these kinds of things that are just becoming like behemoths in terms of like, viewership and distribution. And so it's kind of cool, right? It's just like something that Good and I've learned with this podcast experience too, is like we're currently not like doing any advertising on this platform or anything. For us, it's like, look at all these amazing conversations that it sparked, and people that were networking and meeting like yourself. And there's some of that too, like with an NFT project, like you got this project. So it's kind of like you have this brand, you have this community, and it's kind of leading you down a certain path that's opening these different doors that maybe you would have never been knocking on those doors if you weren't doing this kind of project. So like to date, what is like one of the most, I think, like memorable, interesting things that you've like experienced as being the founder or the owner of this particular NFT project that was like a surprise to you?
I mean, just what we talked about with the fight league. Like, if that comes to fruition, it's going to be a massive fucking play. And the cool thing is like the Kanpai Pandas are going to own part of that, so part of that revenue go back into the treasury. So not only would we be the first ones to own, an NFL suite, we'd also be the first ones to own our own fight league. I mean, that's some pretty cool fucking shit, man. I didn't envision that happening, 6 months ago for sure. But here we are, right? And if you're a business owner and a leader, like you might start down one path, but then when other doors open, you have to be able to pivot, right? And that's one thing that I'm very good at, is like, okay, maybe this doesn't work, but this does, And if this doesn't, then we'll find the next thing to do, right? You've got to be able to pivot and make changes as a business owner. And yeah, so like that's the wildest thing so far that's come out for sure. Right. And you were just talking about like the media side and the content, distribution thing. Like we're launching Kanpai Media here shortly. We just filmed our first podcast called Overdogs. It's 3 of us. It's myself, Mac Malley, and Sam Alvey. We just had, on the very first episode, we had Sean Strickland, Mike Perry, and Bo Nickel all on the first show. And it's like an MMA betting podcast, right? So we're launching it, Kanpai Media. We'll use that for like, a spot where you can learn about Kanpai Pandas and all the things that we're doing. But we'll also be creating like unique content. We're talking to Bob Menery about doing a golf betting show on there, and a couple other things that we're going to be working on. But like the thing is like create unique content that tells the story, and then get people back there and get eyes on the project.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the new world of business comes down to distribution. And I think anybody who understands, like, they want to go start something, they're going to have to understand how to distribute it and how to keep eyeballs there. And, we're able to take in a ton of information. We're able to take in a lot more than we ever have been. And also, like, the selection process of what we have to take in is crucial and key. So, I mean, you definitely get it in building those distribution lines. I don't think a lot of people zoom out far enough to understand that, like, the difference between a great idea and timing is nothing. Like, timing is everything, and distribution is what lands the plane there. So it's exciting to see you come up with all these things. I have a particular passion for the golf betting side of things. So when that media arm spins up, let me at it.
Well, let me shill bags on the Probably Nothing Cup, because one of the things that spun out of Goodmonth Labs is the Probably Nothing Cup, which is like a NFT centric kind of Web3 facing golf circuit. And we had 2 events already, and I think another one is coming up. Is another one coming up good?
Yeah, we got one for permissionless in Austin, Texas, is September 14th. So it's gonna be a hot one, but gonna get a little degenerate gambling field out there. Throwing some NFTs. We actually, the first one we did a hole-in-one for a Bored Ape, and somebody hit the flag, and that ball came like so close to going right in. It was almost one right out of my bag.
Yeah, but when you're talking about like distribution, you've got to have the connections to do that, right? Like that's one of the biggest things, and that's why I built an advisory board that's fucking unrivaled when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like I've got the founder of Kick.com is a stakeholder.
Yep.
And advisor on Pandas. Like, I mean, they're exploding right now.
Right.
They're backed by stake. I've got, advisors that just have years and years of experience in those areas, whether it be content distribution, whether it be digital media, advertising, whatever it may be. Like I've got Steve Espinosa. He ran comms for Trump and Obama White Houses. I've got Steve Cohen. He's a general partner at UTA, United Talent Agency,
yep.
Runs their Southeast division. He manages like Kevin Hart, Jessica Alba, a ton of people. I've got the Kawas that run first round management. They've got 170 athletes, under their branch. So, we're very positioned to do the stuff right and have access to the distribution channels.
Yeah. You love to hear it.
I also think like your project has like an identity, and I think that some of the projects have suffered a little bit because they start to lose their identity and it starts to become confusing. But I think that you guys have like a clear identity, and frankly, selfishly speaking, I've been kind of curious, and because the project came out like at a time when it was kind of a rough time in the market, and like a lot of us had already been like so into different PFP projects, and it was like a little bit hard to like go in and like get to another one. But I've been like eyeballing this, and I really wanted to like hear more about it and learn more about it. And look, man, good. I think we got to put Bags in the no fade zone out here, man. This is one sharp cookie, and he's got the drive to power this thing.
Yeah, that's right, dude. I got to pick up some Kanpai, man. I don't have any in the bag, but it's gonna be exciting to see this. I'm interested to see the media arm spin up, the league spin up. What's your community crossover like? Like, do you have a lot of like if you were looking at your community and the other kind of NFTs they hold, do you have a good idea of like what other NFTs they're in or what other communities they're in? Or are you guys kind of pretty isolated?
It's pretty spread out across the different communities, but I'll say this: we've got a lot of people that just own Kanpai Pandas, right? Like they just opened up a wallet and bought Kanpai Pandas, which I think is fucking phenomenal. Yeah. And it's just because like we have so much different stuff, right? Like if you want to go, to box suites at games and UFC events, like we're the only one that does that kind of stuff. And so a lot of those newcomers, just bought for the access to those events. And so it's different, right? We're quite different than I think most projects out there.
Yeah. So what's the best way to engage with you all? Is it Discord, Twitter? What's your kind of what's the best engagement funnel for people to learn a little bit more?
Yeah, I pretty much live on Twitter. But yeah, Discord's great. Like it's full of information. We've got a ton of, helpful community members that are in there at all times. So if you got questions, like Discord's super easy. But yeah, we tend to keep, people updated on Twitter as well. But that's one of the big parts of launching Kanpai Media for us is like, I want one central location for people to be able to go and say, okay, here's all the major updates that I need to know about and digest in 3 minutes and move along, because Twitter and Discord just get so noisy at times as well.
Yeah, totally. Discord's tough. I mean, I think Discord's like, you have Discord dogs that love it, that need it. And it's almost like you just need to have a presence on Discord. But from a business owner perspective, like, hanging out on Discord is detrimental to what you need to be doing, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people don't like Discord, and especially people if they haven't used Discord, man, if they're going to log in and be like, "What the fuck is this?" It's just not the experience you're looking for. I want to be able to show people, okay, this is what the project is, and boom, 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 and they can move on, because a lot of people they don't want to sit around for all day and just and learn about a project, right?
Yep.
Like they just don't want to. They've got other things they can be doing. They want to be a part of the project, but they want to see the updates in 3 minutes and move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, Bag. So help me understand, man, because I'm checking this out, and like you mentioned, you guys have these events, and it's pretty cool to see. There's like a bunch of events coming up. There's a fight coming up in Jacksonville on 6/17, Rolling Loud in Rotterdam, Rolling Loud Miami, AC Milan versus FC Barcelona, and in Vegas. So what's the deal? Like, if people own a Kanpai Panda, what do they get to like do with it here?
So the way we do that is we take 2 of our box suite tickets to each event, and we put it in the raffle system. So your Panda earns points on a daily basis. At no charge, just accrues points, and then you can put those Panda points into raffles and win those tickets for free. And then the rest of the suite, we just sell at our raw cost. So you can just go in and purchase a ticket with a credit card or USDC, and that's how it works. So yeah, essentially we're building like a really strong loyalty program with the point system. And in that way you can go in there, you can get all kinds of shit. Like we give away, I bought 20 loud punks just because I thought it made sense. And so what we do is you can use your Panda points to get those loud punks, the VIP passes to Rolling Loud, and we give away 20 of those to each event.
Yeah, it's dope. So it's the points. I like that. Right now we're waiting to see what exactly we're going to be able to do with these points that D-Gods and Utes are accruing. And it's supposed to be like a big announcement coming up. But like what we saw in 21 is a lot of people came out the gates with NFT projects tied to like ERC20 tokens, and some tokens that never even made it out. Like, for example, like I had a pretty significant bag of like a Gutter Cat Gang NFTs. And then there was supposed to be like a gang token drop that was similar to like the ApeCoin drop. But we know like ApeCoin dropping was like one of the craziest, biggest things and return of value events that happened in the NFT space of history. So there's a lot of anticipation for this gang coin. I don't think anybody particularly expected it to perform like ApeCoin did. But still, like, people were expecting that. And I think because of regulatory risk, they basically like canceled that. And I think that essentially canceled like a huge part of their roadmap that I think was going to be driven by this token and this utility and this kind of thing. So you guys, it sounds like, kind of steered clear of that and just went with points.
I've always said this: if there's no specific use case for a token, then you don't need to drop one. If I can do the same thing for my ecosystem with a centralized point system, and not only that, but have, if I can run that for 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, and I have a complete data set of like how this fucking points system functions, throughout the entire ecosystem. Like, if I ever want to drop a token later, I have a huge leg up over just dropping a token right out of the gate and just seeing what happens. So I'm a big proponent of not dropping tokens with NFT projects. A lot of that is regulatory risk, but a lot of it is just, it's not fucking needed, So why do it right now until you actually have a necessary, need for it?
Yeah. Well, what I like about your point system is it's targeted. Like, you have a thing that your points are going towards at this moment, and it's a suite, and you understand why you're holding, why you're staking, because you want access to that. And is like, if you love the Panda too, then bonus points. If you're not here for the Panda at all, that's fine, because you have utility back to that. But I think the other thing that's really cool is that USDC purchase on the other half of the suite. It's like there's value prop there, and not having to purchase a license for a suite, but getting access to the suite experience. It's equivalent to golfing at a great membership, meeting people that have access and inviting you along because you've proven yourself to be a friend. Well, your community has proven themselves that they're connected and a friendship of your community, right? So I think there's like, I think some people can look at that points model and they can be like, oh, that's simple. Can't you do this without NFTs? But I think kind of the reality is like, you can't really band together strangers on the internet and do something like that. And that's where the power of blockchain has come through for you, it sounds.
Yeah. I mean, in-person networking is so critical. Like Telegram, Discord is great, right? You can make buddies to a certain extent, but in-person networking is unbeatable, and it has been since the beginning of time, and it will continue to be so. So, you can't top sitting at a football game with somebody in an intimate setting with 16 or 20 people, because you don't know who the fuck's going to be in there, or maybe you do, if you go together. But it may be somebody that opens up a complete door for you, and you just had 3 hours to sit there and have beers with them.
Yep.
You can't top that.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Networking is more than a buzzword. When you peel the layers back and really get into it, it absolutely opens doors and potentially new frontiers. And for people who have an entrepreneurial spirit, for people who are bullish, I think that has intangible value, 100%. So Bagz, we absolutely appreciate your time coming on here today. Do you have any kind of departing words to leave with us?
Well, you want me to give you an inspirational quote or something, or
whatever you want, dude? I'm not gonna fade the inspirational quote.
This is the shill. This is the shill moment for you, Bagz.
Buy a fucking panda, bozo.
Let's go.
I
might, dude. I just might, dude. Right? Well, where can people find you?
I'm at IceBagz, ICEBAGZ _ on Twitter. And you can find us at kanpaipandas.com.
So what's up with the ice, dude? Is it like ice in your veins, or what is the reference to the IceBagz? I always wondered that.
It's a long story, but it was pretty much referencing my bags in 18.
Word.
Because they were cold as fuck.
The Iceman, IceBagz. Love to see it, man. Hey, we really appreciate your time. And you coming on here. I think we definitely are bringing some value to our viewers with this episode and talking about the business behind what's going on. So with that, man, I'll definitely be catching you on the timeline. Props to what you're doing and everything that you're kind of focusing in on. So hope you have a great rest of your week here.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys having me on. Pleasure.
Awesome, man.
Pardon the interruption, but we have breaking news here on the Web3 update. And it was a big week this weekend for Azuki as collectors and enthusiasts of Web3's most popular anime lifestyle brand gathered in Las Vegas. At their highly anticipated nightclub party, Azuki announced their newest NFT offering. The announcement was made by the internet supervillain Zagabond, the serial rug artist turned NFT lifestyle ambassador, who once again said, "Check your wallets," airdropping Azuki fans digital ecstasy. Yeah. Then he whispered, "I'm coming to cash grab whatever you have left," and then let out a long, evil, villainous laugh. Of course, that Zagabond would, yes. That's right, elemental beings are making their way into the garden because the last set of beans were just so damn irresistible and cute. The garden needs more beans. Do we really need more beans, guys? I still haven't figured out what these beans do. Are they supposed to do something? I haven't figured it out. Do they do anything? I don't know. They are beans. What do you expect? Like a fucking burrito or something? Just tell me what the fuck the beans do. Please, somebody, for the love of God, what do these beans do?
And thanks for listening. Now sending you back to the Never Fade podcast.
Good. That was a lot of fun, dude, talking to Bagz, man. I actually was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was a pretty interesting take on NFTs and kind of Web3 and the business side of it all. What's your take? What's your main takeaways?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, but we did get the business narratives that I was hoping for. I mean, you can't fade people who figured things out in the past and are figuring things out now, specifically within a bear market and around new technology. So yeah, it's interesting. I love that his points mean something to his community. I don't know why that's so lost on the space, is making the benefits of being in a community really matter to the persona of your community is a novel concept, which is a little bit odd. But yeah, excited to see, where I'm excited about his media arm. Because he had mentioned, bringing together some sports and betting media shows, as well as golf betting, which obviously it's golf is near and dear to my heart. So that's going to be really interesting to watch that unfold. I'm not really a, MMA guy or UFC, so that's a little bit, out of my league, but I'm definitely going to, tune into his community and see what type of people are swimming around the Kanpai Pandas and what kind of energy they bring. Because I think, eventually we're going to get out of this bear. Eventually communities are going to get out running and connections are going to be made. So I think that's an important, sleeping dormant factor to watch. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he really understands the demographic of who he's facing here. I think that he understands the culture of that demographic, and he's really zoning in on experiences, sporting events, basically using the assets that they have, like a suite at Allegiant Stadium and other things that they're building here, and kind of plugging that into the ecosystem with the points. So I think, dude, he's a sharp dude. I think that, beneath it all, there's just this resiliency that he has from his experience in the past. And I think that that's something that in this type of marketplace and given the ups and downs, that resiliency and that kind of self-confidence is huge. And I think that shines through. And I will say that, we've had a pretty good track record on this show of bringing in projects that maybe aren't in the limelight, kind of before they catch a hot streak. We talked a lot about D-Gods before they went on this massive bull run. We talked to Henry from OniForce when OniForce floor price was 0.5 ETH, and then literally a few weeks after we broadcast our show, they hit 1.5 plus ETH. And so I do think we generally have pretty good timing. And when I look at this Kanpai Pandas project, let's just simplify this for a second. These guys launched in a bear market. They had a run up, they pulled back, but they're currently still sustaining a floor price that's very respectable. They're on the front page of Blur. They have all of these different kind of IRL experiences already scoped out for their current holders that they can use these points. So they figured out this engagement tool with the points, and now then they have all of these entertainment sports connections through mixed martial arts. And he talked about all of these other advisory groups that they're working with this all sounds very bullish to me. So I guess I will say I wouldn't be surprised if Kanpai Pandas, not financial advice, does end up to outperform a little bit in the coming months here. So I'm kind of going to be watching that as well, looking to see if some of these efforts and this resiliency pays off.
Yeah, it's the resiliency bet. And I think for someone who knows about, marketing and advertising and slapping logos on places where his people and his community members like to look and like to be and like to see, there's a psychological effect of somebody, getting access to use their points to buy or, reserve a spot in their suite. He also mentioned that the other half of the suite can be sold for, US dollar, which is just smart because I think there's this Web3 world that just thinks that every holder deserves everything for free. And this is with it being points, it's a limited free experience, but you also have access to spend your dollars on it, and you lower the barrier of friction by not having to, buy the license fee to own your own suite or pay secondary, marked up rates to enter a suite. So think about that, right? I think the utility of getting a suite at cost should be normalized a little bit more. I'm not someone who purchases suite tickets or thinks about suite tickets ever. So that's not really my lane, but for people who have ever purchased a suite on secondary and paid the upcharge, I mean, why not pay 0.67 ETH for a Kanpai Panda and then just pay cost? It's not even about the points at that juncture for you, right? Am I seeing that right?
Yeah, plus there's this kind of thing of like, he said that the holders, a lot of them, like, they just hold that NFT. Like, they heard about it, they jive with it, they got a wallet just to hold that. And like, what that sounds like to me is sustainability, because what we have in a lot of collections is, oh, this seems hot, so people who are in the NFT space, they pile into it. Oh, there was some bad news or some delay or something cooled off, boom, people like rush out of it. And so probably they did have that peak and kind of pull back, and right now they're at this kind of like, I would say maybe like a consolidation zone. So and he does see the value in the IRL connections. He likes our idea with the probably nothing cup and like the getting out there on the course and letting it bang IRL with people. Like, I think it's cool. Like, I could see somebody really enjoying themselves if like this was like their like first NFT or like their only NFT, and getting to have that experience and kind of like stripping away all these like unrealistic expectations of like, you know, Bored Ape Yacht Club going 150 ETH. Like, let's just like, let's start from a realistic perspective here for a second. So with that, that concludes another episode of Never Fade the NFT podcast. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at NeverFadeNFT. Follow at Goodmonth ETH, at FaXx_ETH, and to our producer at Hazel B. Jordan on Twitter. Take us away, boy.
Ain't gonna catch me without a roof over my head, verifying everything. That's a bad bet if the bags check less. About to burn back to back, flipping not cheap when that Jenny duh hits. That's the race to 250 in the world, and you chose to sleep. That's a bad bet if you wake up checkless. No more people without bags, yet they need status. Running head first with the VV check thirst. Never heard of a hearse, but they connecting the dots.